This is Love, Dating, and Marriage Month, and that was awesome about what we just heard about Hebrews chapter 9, and I'll have to study that even more when it pertains to marriage and the covenant, and I loved that sharing. Thank you. That was awesome. We just read in Ephesians chapter 5 about not to be deceived by people with vain words. That word vain means worthless. Worthless words or worthless conversation. We're going to talk today about communication in our marriages and how important it is. But I just want us to realize, again, I think Ephesians chapter 5 is all about marriage. And what will happen many times in a marriage is that there will be people outside of your marriage that wants to communicate with you with vain, worthless words. What do you mean by that? I remember one time when I was working at the factory and we were at lunchtime and a lady was complaining about her husband. By the way, do not do that in public. Don't do those things. That does not accomplish anything. That discourages, not encourages. It destroys, it does not build. And she was complaining about her husband, and one lady kept telling her, well, I would never let a man treat me that way. I would never let a man treat me that way. And that finally got me upset how many times she said that. And I said, you've proved that because you've been married 6 times. You'll never let a man treat you that way. Those are vain words. That's someone else outside of your marriage being involved in your communication. Now, there is time to seek counseling, I understand. There's times to go to people and ask for help. Those things are fine. But to open yourself up to hear vain words and things that can hurt and destroy your marriage. That's what you do when you open it up to the public. Facebook and the new internet that we have does a lot of that. Who doesn't see people get on the internet and complain about their marriage or complain about their husband and all the advice that they get? Vain words. Communication in your marriage. When I think about it, and we talk about here, Jesus, an example of our marriage, and our marriage is an example of Jesus, we have to think of Jesus Christ when we think about communication in our marriages. There's not a whole lot out there about communication as far as in the Bible in marriages. Not too many people teach this. Not too many people take the Bible and try to show communication in our Bible, in our marriages. There's a lot out there about practical things, and then they throw Scripture in, which is okay. That's great. But to actually open the Bible and say, this is an example of what our communication should be, there's not a lot. And so that's why I want to look at Jesus Christ, who is an example of our marriages, his example in prayer, his communication with God the Father, and how that is an example of our communication in our marriages. I never knew where to put this, but I remember one day thinking about this, and I come up to Kay and I told her this, and it blew me away. What I have found out is everything you are looking for in your spouse, you will find in God. Security, you'll find that in God. Always willing to talk, you'll find in God. Just name everything that you're looking for in a spouse, you will find in your God. And so why do I say that? Your first communication, your first discipleship, because remember we talk about discipleship or disciple in marriage. Your first everything needs to be God. Always Make your relationship with God first and above any other relationship. Above your children, above your family, above your marriage. Your first relationship is with God. Because everything you're looking for in this life, you find in God. You will not find in a person. You'll find moments, you'll find certain things, but we are imperfect people trying to live a perfect example, and we'll let each other down. We do. There's only one perfect relationship, and that's your relationship with God. So everything you're looking for, you will find in God. We look at this and go with me a little bit with this as we go along. Jesus and the Father are one. Jesus said, John 10:30, I and the Father are one. Here's Jesus Christ. He's God in the flesh, and God the Father in heaven, and they are one. God sees our marriage as a male and female you. One. When He created Adam and Eve, God looked at the two and said, there is the male Adam and there's the female Adam. They just talked about how when you die, and both of you die, you become a new life. And that's what God sees a marriage, a brand new life. The female and male, you, as one. Just like Jesus and God are one. Now, let's read that. Genesis chapter 5, verses 1 through 2. This is the book of the generation of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made He him. Male and female created He them. And blessed them, and called their name what? Called their name Adam. It was Adam who named Eve, Eve. God looked at him and said, there's the female Adam, there's the male Adam, they're one. In the day when they were created, Matthew 19 verse 6, wherefore they are no more twain, no more two, separate, but one flesh. What, therefore, God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. And so the same as Jesus is the same as God, and they're one, yet Jesus communicated with God, did He not? God the Father, and we're going to read that. When He prayed, He was praying to God the Father, but He was praying to who? Himself. The same way two a man and a woman get together and they become one. When we communicate with each other, who am I talking to? Myself. We cannot lose the fact that we are one. It's no longer no longer Michael Snyder. God sees me as the male Michael or the male Snyder, and He sees Kay as the female Snyder. We are one. One. That's why it says when a husband loves his wife, he's to love her as himself, because that is himself. And no man will hate himself, Ephesians chapter 5 again. Well, no, I won't. She is me, and I am her. We are one. So when we communicate, we're talking with ourselves. I hope you read the little thing in the message from the pastor, from Zig Ziglar, about that marriages would be better if we looked at each other as on the same side. Not a struggle, not a fight Not two different dreams, two different directions, but one going on the journey together. We talked last week about the things, the pain, the hurt, and things of this life that can hold you back. Even the sin that holds you back and keeps you from going forward in your marriage. To lay that aside so you can go forward. When Kay and I, when we were dating, one of the things that we enjoyed about our relationship was how open and free we could communicate. There was no barrier. And that has bled into our marriage. And we talk about everything. We are, very open about our feelings, our hurt, our pain. And I told her I've never had this before, where I could feel comfortable enough to tell somebody how I'm feeling without the fear of them saying, grow up and be a man. That is rough to be told that. When you're opening yourself up a little bit and you're kind of raw and somebody says, well, just grow up and be a man. But no. Instead, let's work on this together. Because that's what we do in a marriage. So let's look at Jesus' prayer life, and then we're going to relate it to our communication in marriage, and then we'll be done. What we learn from Jesus' prayer life: 1, prayer is necessary. Jesus always said, I need to go pray. I need to go pray. I need to go pray. Constantly in the Bible, he was gone and praying. Where was Jesus? He's praying. So it's a necessity. It's a necessity in your Christian life as a disciple of Christ to have your prayer time every day. When you're praying to God and you're alone with your God and you're praying. But how does that equate to our marriages? It's a necessity to communicate. It's a necessity. Many people, when you go into counseling and in a marriage and there's problems and there's troubles, you'll ask, or you talk, how about that? And you start talking and one person starts opening up and the other person's like, I never knew any of this. Wow. And it's a revelation. Oh, how long you been married? 5, 6, 7 years. And you never knew this? And the thought crosses your mind, and sometimes it does. Do you guys even talk? Well, yeah, we talk. But you don't really communicate, do you? When you pray, well, we're going to talk about this later. But when you pray to God, do you just say, rub-a-dub-dub, thank you for the grub? Or there's moments when you're crying and you need an answer and you need it now, or you need help. That should be your spouse also. It's a necessity to communicate in order to have a strong, successful marriage. And if there's a situation where you're afraid to do that, you need to fix that reason. You should not be afraid to talk to yourself, should you? That's how God looks at us, and that's what we are. Why would you be afraid to open up to yourself? That's who your spouse is. They're you. Prayer demands solitude. That's what I already kind of talked about. To get alone with your God. And Jesus would go up into a mountain, or he'd go over here and he would get alone with his God. And we should do that as disciples of Christ. Get alone every day where it's just you and God, and you pray and you talk and you have communication with your God. Same thing with your spouse. It should be time, and it doesn't have to be certain every day, don't say, it's 7 o'clock, so it's our alone time together. Let's talk. No, but there should be times where it's just you and them, and you're talking, and it involves no one else. Do not bring other people into your circle. It's you talking to you about you and your marriage and what you're going through. And you get alone and you talk these things out. You send the kids off, or you put them someplace, or if you got a playpen, put them in the play, and you're talking. You're communicating. I'm not sure about this. It's not a time of judgment and condemnation. It's a time to open up and tell what your fears are. Why you want to do something. It's not a time to say, you always, and to argue and fight. It's a time to communicate and express how you feel. Listen to me. You cannot condemn how somebody feels. They feel a certain way. And there's a reason why they feel that way. Whether their feeling is right or wrong, they feel that way. You need to talk that out. I feel neglected, somebody might say in a marriage. Well, they feel that way. We need to talk that out. You don't just say, you're not, I'm here all the time. You need to talk that out. You need to communicate with each other. Open up your heart to yourself, your spouse. Be as raw as you can be, just like you are with your God. That's your person. That's you. Prayer demands solitude. It's just you two. There are things my wife knows about me that no one else knows. No one else needs to know. She knows it because she's my wife. We open up to each other in solitude. Prayer will often be strenuous. One of the things that I've learned in this relationship with Kay, and as we talk and you start to open up, it's not always pleasant. And if she were here, she'd shake her head. It's not always pleasant. We don't always agree, which shocked me. We don't always agree. We may not agree about a certain thing, or how I view something, or how she views something. And it can get a little strenuous, little rough. Same thing in your prayer life with God. Do you and God always agree? No. Now, the difference is, and I'd like to think this in our marriage, God is always right, and I'm always wrong. I'd like to think in our marriage, I'm always right, and she's always wrong. I would like to think that, but that's not how it goes. If anything, she's mostly right, and I'm mostly wrong. But don't tell her I said that, and it's on film, but it gets rough sometimes with God. God, I don't agree with this. I don't understand this. And it can get kind of rough. Remember when Jesus was in the garden before his death, and he was praying to his God, and he sweat, the Bible says, as if sweat of blood or actual blood. You can't get more strenuous than that. And sometimes when we communicate as a husband and wife, it's going to be that way. But have that. Listen to me, if you both come with the idea we're not going to judge, put down, argue and fight, and we're going to communicate and talk this out, I have found, no matter how rough it may be, in the end, I love my wife more. I love her more. Because we talked about this, we cried about this, we figured something out, or maybe we haven't. And we're still working on it. But we both know where we're coming from. And she still accepts me with all my weaknesses, all my doubts, all my fears. Just like God does. accepts us with all our doubts, with all our fears, and all our troubles. He's still there to communicate. Prayer has a purpose. Now listen to me. There are times Kay and I get funny and we giggle. Like yesterday we were driving back from Mother's Cupboard, and there's this drink, it's called Dr. Thunder instead of Dr. Pepper, and we were having fun with that, and I told her that's going to be my new name, Dr. Thunder, and I'm going to be Dr. Thunder, and I said, they're going to make a movie about me, and I start humming, and she goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm humming my theme song for my movie, and then I tried to tell her different, I guess this is just funny for us, because she started laughing. I told her different situations, and I'm singing, I'm doing dun, 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 like that, and she goes, what is that? I said, I'm jumping out of an airplane right now. I mean, I'm just going through the movie, Dr. Thunder. And so I said, I'm going to put you in the movie. Your name is going to be Sugar. And so it's Dr. Thunder and Sugar. And, stupid conversation, but it was fun and funny. But listen to me, there are times we get together and we communicate for a purpose. There is a reason why we need to talk. We need to accomplish this or that. A lot of times we get together and we have, like we're going to do this afternoon, she has a calendar, thank God. She writes everything down in her calendar, and her are going to get together and figure out what her and I can do together this month. Like I want to go to a Colts game Saturday, but we need to figure out, because she has a busy schedule with her work, and to find out if we can even do that. And we get down and we sit and we talk for a purpose, a meaningful conversation, communication. We communicate everything. One thing that I've always strived for, and that is great, is my wife always knows where I am, what I'm doing, where I'm going. She always knows. I always communicate. And if anything changes, thank God we have a cell phone now, and I can just text her, right? In the old days, not so much. But nowadays, I can text her and say, hey, I know I plan to go to Rural King, but instead, it's cheaper at Walmart, and I'm going to go there. Sounds silly. Well, what if Rural King caught on fire? I know I'm going way out there. And she hears it on the news. Where does she think I am? Rural King. But no, I'm safe at Walmart instead. Communicate everything and have a purpose for your communication. We're to do the same thing with our God. Tell God everything. Tell Him your heart. Tell Him your desires. Tell Him your ups, your downs. Tell Him where you are in your life. Let Him know. But the same thing with your spouse. Because listen to me, you're just talking to who? Yourself. We have to look at our marriages that way. Not a partnership like we read in there. It's not. It's not a 50-50 thing. It's not a partnership. It's not roommates. You are a new life. One flesh. And God sees you as male you and female you. You're one. So when I open up and talk, I'm talking to me. Thank God when you have two people who see it that way and communicate that way and live their marriage and their lives that way. This is us, we, me. I like what one guy said one time. You take, and it's no longer, when you're dating, it's we, and when you get married, that W turns upside down and it's now me. It's us. I got a few more minutes. Let us read some of these things about communication and Jesus' prayer life. One, Jesus' prayer life is an example of communication in a marriage. Communication for a deeper relationship. We read here that Jesus, let's read. Now when all the people were baptized, it came to pass that Jesus also being baptized and praying, he was baptized and praying. He was speaking to his God, to himself. Praying, the heaven was open, and the Holy Ghost descended in a bodily shape like a dove upon him. And a voice came from heaven which said, Thou art my beloved Son, in thee I am well pleased. And there became a deeper relationship right then. If you want a deeper relationship with your spouse, communication is the key. The most important thing above finances, above just name anything, communication always leads to a deeper relationship. No, it's not sex. That doesn't lead to a deeper relationship. Sex is a result of a better relationship, a deeper relationship. Communication leads to a deeper relationship, just like in Jesus' prayer life. Just like in your prayer life, when you pray to God and you have your moment and your time with you and just God, your relationship gets deeper with God. Same thing with your spouse. The more you communicate, the more you express, the deeper the relationship. Men, if I have any advice on this communication thing, learn to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. For some reason, that's a difficult thing for men to say. Say it. And then understand you got to be able to say what you're sorry about, because that'll be her question. I'm sorry. Yeah, about what? You better have the right answer. The right answer is not that I made you angry. Yeah, why did you make me angry? Okay? Learn to say I'm sorry. And then let's discuss what we did, what I did, what was said, what was done. Let's communicate this and work it out so it doesn't happen again. We avoid too much in our marriages. We set aside, we won't communicate, and those things always get better, right? No. How do I know that I'm hurting your feelings if you've never told me? I can go on and on and on and keep hurting and keep hurting and keep hurting. But you don't tell me, how do I know that I'm hurting you? But if I do, and you express that to me, and we have an open communication, I know not to do that anymore. I know to make sure what it is that I'm doing, like rinse out the dishes. I'm getting so good, I'm rinsing out her dishes now. I know that if I don't, that hurts you. I'm going to. Communicate leads to a deeper relationship, just like our spiritual relationship with God. Communication when you're overwhelmed. When you're overwhelmed. In Luke 5:15 through 16, but so much and the more went there a fame abroad of him, and a great multitude came together to hear and to be healed by him of their infirmities. So there was a great crowd came. They wanted to hear from him. They wanted to be healed. And he withdrew himself into the wilderness and prayed. Jesus, as a man, got overwhelmed too. And it was just too much right now. And what did he do? Wait a minute. I got to go pray. I'm overwhelmed right now. There's too many people that want to hear from me. There's too much going on. There's too much stress right now. I need to go away and pray. Listen to me. Your greatest stress relief is your God when you're in prayer with him, and that's fine. Your second greatest stress relief is your spouse. And you begin to become stressed and overwhelmed, and work is overwhelming, and whatever, life is overwhelming, the children are overwhelming. Who can you talk to but yourself, your spouse? And let them know how overwhelmed and stressed you are, and communicate with them on that. So I know, as a husband, where I need to step in and help. Or I know, as a husband, not to step in, because sometimes they just want to talk. That's the most difficult thing as a man, is because you bring something to a man, and what do we want to do, guys? We want to fix it. We're fixers. We pride ourselves in fixing, and sometimes they don't want us to fix it. So please tell us that, okay? Tell us, I don't want you to fix this, I just want you to listen. Okay, that would help us. Just pretend like we're stupid, because we are. All right? But sometimes just to express it to somebody who's going to listen and care makes all the difference in the world. Our God always cares. He always listens. And when we're overwhelmed and stressed, we can go to Him. But you should be able to go to your spouse also, freely. Communicate when others are against you. I didn't quite know how to word this, but let's read this. Luke chapter 6, 11 through 12. And they were filled with madness and communed one with another what they might do to Jesus. And it came to pass in those days that he went up into a mountain, prayed, and continued all night in prayer with God. And so here was Jesus. They were having meetings, and they were talking about and discussing how they can get rid of Jesus. Because, they didn't like him. And they were against him. And what did Jesus do? He said, wait a minute, I need to go talk to myself. I need to go talk to God. And that's a good example as Christians. People are against you, and people will be against you. People will try to hurt you. They'll even try to get you fired. You ever had that happen? I have. And they'll set against you. And yes, you go to your God, but you should be able to go to your spouse and say, this is a problem at work. This person has done this. This person has said this and that. And communicate that and talk about it. I don't like when somebody comes in and my wife will come in and she'll say, oh, I had a bad day. I said, really? What made it bad? Oh, it was just a bad day. No, tell me. Talk. Let's communicate. Let me know what was bad about it. I want to know. And to have that relationship that way where I can tell you what's going bad in my life and who's against me and who's hurting me and all those things. Communicate that. Communicate when you have to make a life-altering decision. I don't know how many times. It's happened several times I've seen in my life. Not with me, but others. I know a person who bought a house. The husband went out and bought a house, and the wife never knew anything about it. She was told, we're moving in 30 days. What? Went out and bought a house. Made a decision without consulting her, asking her anything. But Jesus, when he had to make a life-altering decision, who did he go to first? God. He prayed. Here we read in these verses, he wanted to pick out 12 men to be his apostles. And before he did that, he prayed about it. Before you make life-altering decisions, speak to your spouse and communicate and work that out. Before you go and change your job and take less money, don't you think you should talk to him or her about that? Maybe you feel like you want to quit your job altogether and stay home. Don't you think maybe you should talk to someone about that first and communicate that? A lot of times people get, it's my life, it's my life, it's my life. It's not. You gave that up. You gave up that old life when you got married. It's no longer your life. And if you can't live that way and you don't want to live that way, don't get married. You don't have to get married. You can live your life the way you want to, any way you want to. You don't have to answer to anybody. But as soon as you get married, it's no longer your life. We're together. We're one life. Communicate when you're going to have life-altering decisions, just like Jesus did. When we look at Jesus' prayer life, communicate to show your gratitude. Thank God. Here it is. He was given some bread, a little bit of fish, and he thanked God for it first. He showed his gratitude for what he had. When do you say thank you to your spouse? I remember, even Kay is famous for this. I'll do stuff I'm supposed to do. I'll take out the trash, and I'll come back in, and you know what she says to me? Thank you for taking out the trash. Do you know what I want to do from now on? Make sure I take out the trash. Because you know why? I know I'm going to get that pat on the head. I love that. Learn to be grateful and show gratitude and say thank you to your spouse. Even in the little things. Thank you for spending a little time with me today and watch TV. I appreciate that. Learn to show appreciation. Jesus always communicated thankfulness in his prayer. And we, as an example, we should do the same in our marriages. Say thank you. If he does something like hold the door open for you, say thank you. Not like, what are you doing? Don't make a big deal about it. Say thank you. Remember one time my dad held the door open for my mom. And you remember the old cars, they had the seats that went all the way down. There weren't these bucket seats. And he held the door open for her, and she slid all the way across to the driver's side. She thought that's why he was holding the door open for her, so she could drive. Say thank you. Appreciate them. Communicate when you are struggling. When you personally are struggling with something. John chapter 12, verse 27. Now is my soul troubled. This is Jesus' prayer. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. But for this cause came I into the hour. Here's Jesus saying, I'm troubled. I'm struggling. Go to your spouse and communicate that. I'm struggling with this. I'm normally pretty good. Or I'm not very good at this and I struggle with it. I'm struggling with this or that. Imagine a relationship that's so deep you could go to your spouse and say, there's this sin I'm struggling with. Help me. They are a helpmeet, by the way. Help me. Or I'm struggling with this or that. I'm in trouble. I feel depressed about this. And I'm struggling with it. Communicate that with your spouse. Communicate when you do not feel their presence. Here it is, Jesus, Matthew 27, verse 46. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Here Jesus is on the cross, and we can get into all the other things, but he felt as if God had turned his back, as God has forsaken him. And there will be times in your relationships you're saying, Kay and I will say this to each other, where are you right now? Because, I might be in the same room, but I'm not with her. Where are you right now? Communicate that. Don't let that just fade away, such a thing. Don't let that just grow in the back. Say, I don't feel like you're present with me right now. I feel like you're someplace else. I feel like your mind and your heart is someplace else. Communicate that early. Because if that's true, their mind and their heart is someplace else, after a certain time, you let that go by, it's very difficult to get back. Communicate with each other. When I don't feel like you're with me right now, I don't know where you are, ask and talk about it. Yesterday we were driving and Kay was just talking up a storm, and that's what women do. I thought that would be funny, sorry. And I'm driving, and then she stopped all of a sudden. She tapped me on my head. She goes, "Where's this?" Because what? Was I really listening? I wasn't in her conversation. I wasn't. My mind was someplace else. It wasn't present with her. And I told her where I was, and then we communicated and talked about that. That's what we talked about. Because she says, "You're not present with me right now." Again, it's not arguing, it's not fighting, it's not making demands, it's not taking somebody and beating them. It's communicating. And being open and honest and raw with who you are, and you're talking to yourself. Because you are one. And if you can't have that or don't have that in your relationship, you need to find out why and work on that. Because communication is the key to your marriage. And it's an awesome thing to be able to come into a room and say to your wife, "I'm not feeling this today," or "This is how I feel," or "That hurt me," or "I just feel like staying in bed all day. Can we do that?" And have her say, "Yep, let's do that. That's awesome." To be that open, that raw. Communicate. Just like Jesus Christ's prayers to his God, should our communication be with our spouse. Let us bow our head and